Hi, and welcome to our first presentation this morning. So our first presentation is going to be a product presentation, and today we are going to be talking about the acetate window sheets that Stampin' Up! Sells. Now this is just a plastic material, like transparency material. Stampin' Up! Sells it as a 12 by 12 sheet, which is good for scrapbookers. They could cover an entire page if they want. Those of us who are card makers, we're going to cut it down to do something with it on a project. The reason for having this conversation today, one of your make and takes, your morning make and takes, is going to be using some acetate. But if you're doing projects with people, this is a good thing to design a class around, because there's so many different things that you can actually do with the acetate that you can provide your customers a variety of different projects that they can make that are actually a little awesome and special because they're made with this material that they don't use all the time. You can also then build in the cost of a package of the material so that their class fee includes the cost of the thing, and then they're going to use the whole thing, and they've got stuff they can take home and play with. When I'm all done with this, I do have a list of a few ideas that I put together for using the acetate, a fairly long list. So let me show you some of the things that you can do with it, and then I'm going to do a couple of things. So this is, first of all, this is just, I was going to have a tool out here. Oh, well, we're good without that. Actually, no. Irene, would you mind just getting my tool bag? It's over there in the blue. All right, so this is one use for it. It's just covering a stamped image. Adhesive is, of course, an issue. But you can see with my pokey tool underneath here that you're not even aware of that glue dot underneath there, because the glue dot itself is transparent. So just squish it down really hard, and nobody's going to look at that and go, oh, look, there's the adhesive. You really have to look hard to find it. So that's one option, to just use it to make a card a little bit special by putting something shiny over the surface. Okay, the fact that it is transparent means it's great for something like a bridge card, because you need a piece of something to hold the card into its shape, and then if you want them to be able to see what that pretty stuff is in the back, you'd use a piece of acetate because they can see through it. The fact that it's see-through means that you can use it for cards like a split front card. That just cuts out a chunk from it and then replaces it with the acetate. You can use it for windows so that you specifically can see through. Both of these, the idea was to be able to see through and what was stamped on the inside of the card. This one is very similar, except that you're not seeing through to the inside of the card. This is the whole front has the snowflake embossed piece has a hole cut in it, and then actually, I don't know if you can tell, but there's glitter in there. Oh, there, I think I can see a little bit of glitter shining. So this is where you keep the glitter contained so that it's neat when it gets sent to someone. Let's see. So those are just some ways where the acetate is an element on the card itself. Let me move that stack out of the way. The next thing to know is that you can emboss the acetate. You can run it through your embossing machine. I only have one sample of this, but it's very subtle, but it's also definitely noticeable when you look up there and go, oh, there's snowflakes up there, and it wasn't stamping at all. This is an impressive thing to do if you're running a class, because people don't always think about the fact that you can emboss on the acetate. It also die cuts very nicely. So this one is just the die cut piece of the whatever, I don't even know where this came from. This might not even be Stampin' Up! I've had this sample card for a long, long time. But the stamping is all behind it. There's no stamping on the acetate, but of course you can stamp on the acetate. So for this card here, I stamped and then die cut out that piece, and look at the difference that it makes. When you do a class with somebody and you show them the difference between these two cards, this one is just plain ink on top of ink, and this one with a shiny that comes with that acetate, it becomes a pretty impressive thing, right? That's what we're all about, is impressing our customers. So then I have just a bunch of different examples where there is stamping on the acetate. This one is stamping on the acetate, and then we got some cool stuff going on behind it. Again, another one, stamping on the acetate. This one is stamped on the acetate, and it's just the snowflakes that are stamped on here. And then you see the scene showing through from behind. This one is stamped on the acetate, and then it's got the glitter paper showing through from behind. Another one that's just snowflakes stamped on the acetate. So yes, you can definitely stamp on it. Let me move this out of the way. You need to use StazOn ink probably to do that. So this one, you can not only stamp on it, but you can also color on it with blends. So the purple that's showing through on the leaves. Not the watercolor markers, but the blends. And here's another one and another one where it was stamped in acetate, not stamped in StazOn, and then the blends used to color it. And then when it's layered on top of glimmer paper, there's another product that you can sell and another thing to make the project look really pretty. All right, let's put that stack away. Then you can come back and use it for special techniques. So these two are either, I think these are both samples of smack and acetate, which basically you do some watercoloring stuff behind it and you use the acetate to help spread the colors. But this again is very impressive. You can look up the technique of smack and acetate. You can also look up a similar technique called blown glass. I think both of these are smack and acetate, but they're fun. And then there's a piece of the colored cardstock behind it that was just glued and adhered to the acetate. Again, it's very impressive. So you can use the acetate on the card itself. You can also use the acetate just as a tool in your stamping room. Now this one was a Lighthouse stamp set that had a stamp that stamped the light up there. But if you didn't have a stamp set that stamped the yellow for the light, you could use your acetate to define the areas that you want to do the sponging. And now the acetate, instead of becoming part of the card, becomes a tool used to make the card. So then you could sponge in that area. That's what I did do when I made this little punch art snowman, was again, I just took the acetate pieces and defined the areas where I wanted the rays to go, and then went and sponged the color back in, or with that you could probably even sponge Versamark in on that. So let me put the rays out of the way. Oops, that was out of place in the stack. I'll come back to that one. For this card, again, I used the acetate as a tool to define the edges for where I wanted the sponging to go. You could, of course, use paper for that, but paper isn't see-through. And with this, I was a little bit concerned. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to be, I wanted to make sure that I was definitely parallel. So the acetate was my choice. And it's washable. You could have used vellum also, but the vellum isn't washable. And then this card is one of my trade cards for today. And I'm going to show you, because I was mass producing, another way that I used the acetate as a tool. So let me start over from the beginning here. I took a piece of cardboard that was just, any of our specialty papers. They come in the 12 by 12 packs. You got lots of cardboard sitting around. Added a piece of our grid paper. I purposely put the dark crosshairs kind of high so that I could use that as an easy way for lining up my project on this. Laid a piece of the acetate over and used some wide tape to seal it, and now I've got a washable surface that I can work on. So then when I'm mass producing, I can say, okay, I want my card to have a colored area about in here, and then this green stuff, I think they call it mint tape. It's a low-tack craft tape, kind of like washi tape, but I don't know, I think it's a little better than washi tape actually. So I'm going to lay this on here. I wanted exactly a 1/2 inch boundary. This is another piece that I folded over, so now I have a handle on here so I can lift it up easily. Slip my paper under this side. I did a second one to define the other boundary, but I put my 2 pieces of tape specifically on the side so that that would function as a hinge. And then I've forgotten what I used. I'm just going to make up something here. And again, I put a handle down on the bottom. So now I have a hinge that I can use to lift my paper and to easily slip a piece of paper in and out. And then I can come back and do the stamping of my 3 leaves for getting them embossed. And then I can come back and do the sponging over them. I was also a little worried about my project piece slipping while it was in between these two and I was doing the sponging heavy-handed. So this is a Post-it note. I put my Post-it note underneath here. the Post-it note now holds the piece of paper because it's stuck to the back, and part of it's hanging out. So that will stick to my hinge, and now that Post-it note is going to keep the white paper secure in there, and then it's real easy to make consistent a whole bunch of different projects, all with that same size boundary, and all quickly and easily done with the edges of the sponging parallel with the edges of the piece of paper. And then the last two things I was going to show you with this are the fact that you can die cut it means that you can also create your own stencils with it. I just used one of the border dies and cut something where I could make a bunch of clouds up there, but you could do stencils with any die that you have. You can make your own stencils out of it. And then the last thing is you can make a card out of it. So here is a card. It scores real easily. You just would need your bone folder, but you can put the acetate in here, and as easily as you can cut it, you can also score it. And then you'll need your bone folder to hold it into position, which is over in my toolbox. Oh, I put my dirty one, sorry. I made a mistake of trying to smooth the ink on my ink pad with it, and it doesn't wash off. So now this thing is going to, now you've got your folded card here. And then what I did was I started by putting a piece of paper on the inside. So I put this piece of paper on first, and then closed it, and then added the other piece of paper on the front. So now they're lined up perfectly. Now I've got a surface that I can decorate. I've got an inside surface where I can write a note that's a private note that people don't see when the card is open. You could, if you wanted, have embossed this. You could have stamped on the outside of the acetate. And if you don't like seeing the adhesive, which I don't like seeing it, I would probably come back and put a back piece on here as well. But the point is you can also make a card out of acetate. So I don't know, has anybody ever done classes specifically on an acetate material as the focus of the class? It's a cool idea. So you actually have an acetate project in your bag. You might want to reach in and pull out the little plastic bag that has the snowflake in it.